Good Friday afternoon and evening, maybe even Saturday morning where you may be. If it's Saturday morning where you are right now, why are you up? You should be asleep. No response? None?
I don't know. I guess somebody from Australia should respond, not me, right?
Could be, yes. Oh, speaking of responding today, I messed up when I scheduled the stream and forgot to put this in ultra low latency mode, so we're running about 15 to 30 seconds behind. So if we're slow in responding to comments, it's not you, it's us. So
it's not us, it's StreamYard.
No, it's YouTube. It's YouTube. So, but details. Hi, by the way, if you don't know who we are, my name is Darren Pope. This over here to my left, your right, is Victor Farsick. And we are the co-host of a podcast called DevOps Paradox. And Fridays we do this thing live just because we can. It's that time of year. It's always that time of year, it seems now. And,
it's not because we can. It's because we don't have to edit it.
We don't have to edit it. That's correct. That makes it much, much easier. Speaking of editing, we'll get to the podcast for this week. Before we get into the real things, you got your drink? Oh, come on. Focus.
Here's
there we
drink.
go. I have orange today. So
Okay,
cheers, everybody.
Camera anyway.
Yeah, you've got something. I don't know what you have today. I lost my mouse. Hang on just a second. Guillermo, how you doing? Thomas, good to see you.
Hey.
One of our normal buddies that's around, usually on Fridays, is Vladislav. I don't know if he's here today or not, but I saw it was his birthday this week. So I think he's probably, 21 again?
20-something.
20-something.
And then we need to figure out which number to multiply that figure.
Yes. Some factor. Once you get to whole digits after that, like I am, like almost 3 times, then it adds up. This week's podcast, we had Tobias on. We talked about, I don't remember the actual title, actually. I have it written down, but I want to call it Death to Docker Compose. Maybe a little too strong, but maybe not. I don't know.
I rarely, this is kind of embarrassing, but I rarely re-listen the episodes. And rarely because I'm not going to the gym anymore, it's closed and stuff like that, so not much opportunities. But I did listen to this one, and this is one of my favorites. This is kind of self-commercial, but I loved it.
Why did you love it?
Because a couple of times we almost got into a fight. Not really a fight, but kind of it
strong
was
disagreement.
Disappointments, disagreements. I don't agree with that, or what do I do now? Stuff like that. So I liked it because it was. It felt like an honest conversation. I like conversations.
I don't think Docker Compose, of course the way we titled it was meant to be clickbait, but I don't think Docker Compose needs to die. I think Docker Compose in context of Kubernetes is not the best solution today.
Yeah. So exactly. If you add in Kubernetes world or Kubernetes somewhere in that text, I agree with it 100%. And Docker also agrees. I mean, they will not say it publicly, but Docker is not investing in Kubernetes. Let's face it. They're investing in other directions, and it makes a lot of sense for them. It makes a lot of sense for everybody.
Yeah, if they keep focusing on the developer experience within, it's going to be second to none.
Yeah.
And then maybe Kubernetes comes back into play for Docker Compose. But today, as of January 22nd, 2021, not really. I also saw what was it? We'll talk about the comment that I sent over to you. It wasn't on this. Actually, let's talk about it now. Somebody posted a comment on the YouTube version of the podcast, which is basically just the audio, and it's got a still and it's got an audiogram. So if you ever want to go see how voices move around, go do that. But somebody posted a comment on that, and I basically threw it to you. to answer.
I did answer.
You did answer.
Now ask me whether I remember what I answered.
No, I don't know what you answered either. But he brought up a very interesting, like, here, let me pull it up. Hang on a second. Because
if you pull it up, then I will read it and I will pretend that I remember what I answered.
Okay, here. While we're sharing, this is before we're getting into the real stuff today. So that's where we are now. Here it is. So if we get... Oh, hush. Okay, sorry. That was in... Was that... Did you hear that too?
No.
Okay, good. It was just in my ears. So where are the comments? This is the bad thing about... There we go. Okay.
There we go.
So David posted... And I don't understand why people don't use Docker Swarm stacks as an easier alternative for Kubernetes. And I didn't want to be a smart aleck and just say Swarm is dead. Move on. You were much more polite.
Yeah, I did my best. But that's, I think that it boils down to, hey, do you want... I'm not going to even enter right now into discussion, should you use Kubernetes or should you use Swarm? But if you want Swarm, hey, use Swarm. But if you want Kubernetes to behave like Swarm, which is basically what Compose does,
yep,
then I would say that you chose the wrong platform. Then Kubernetes is maybe not the platform for you. I mean, and this is kind of like, why would anybody want to use Docker Compose with Kubernetes instead of Docker Compose with Swarm? That's right. The real question, kind of like, why? Yeah. And I don't really I have a feeling that might be more like the situation that you're forced to do something, but you want to do something else. Like, comes the decision from the top management, use Kubernetes, and you say, no, but I like Docker. And they say, but no, you have to use Kubernetes. And then you come up with a solution to actually make Kubernetes look like Docker.
Yeah. I mean, to me, this is telling of what's going on. This is Swarm Kit, right? The last commit was July 28th of 2020. So 7 months ago. If you were to go and look at, let me do this. If I look at classic Swarm, it's archived. It's not even being...
that one is,
Yeah, not to be... Right, I mean, so, you know, looking at both of these now, this one says updated 7 days ago. What the heck was that about? It's probably a different thing, but it's just, there doesn't appear to be any development effort going towards Swarm in any way, shape, or form. Whereas how many thousands of people are working on Kubernetes?
Yeah. But there's that, one of the big problems with Docker Compose is that when they made it work with Kubernetes, it was almost kind of a transition, or we are unsure, do you want to use... we are still offering you this Docker enterprise that can run Kubernetes and Swarm, and you can use Compose for all of that to work as if it's completely transparent thing. And the whole idea of Docker Compose working with Kubernetes is very tied with Docker Enterprise, which is a silly, weird hybrid of Swarm and Kubernetes in a cluster, as if anybody would ever need two orchestrators in the same cluster, except as a transition to move from one to another. So I still see it as a transition at the best, and more likely something that will just prolong your misery of moving away from Docker Swarm.
Yep.
It's harsh, I know, and so many people have so much vested interest in Docker in production, let's say.
Yeah.
But hey, it is what it is.
Let's see if I can find these guys. Like one of the ones, I'll pull this up. So I had a client that was using Portainer for their Swarm stuff. How long ago was this? 2 years ago, I believe. But now if you take a look at Portainer, now it's, let's look at the list. Kubernetes, here, let's zoom in just a little bit here, just to, Community Edition is an open source tool for managing container-based applications in Kubernetes, Docker, okay, Docker Swarm, ACI, and Edge environments. This list tells you who's number one.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure, and I'm really now guessing, so if anybody from Portainer is listening, correct me, but I would guess that actually Docker and Docker Swarm was at the beginning of that list in the past, or maybe were the only things in a list, and then you gradually move towards Kubernetes like everybody else is doing, and then you realize that Kubernetes is the king and moved it on the top of that list.
Yeah.
That's my best guess. I might be completely wrong, so correct me. I really don't know much history about Portainer.
Okay. So let's move on from this week's episode. Vladislav did show up, 21 times 2, so he's at a whole number. Again, wait till you get to 3. 3 is... I'm ready for 5. My goal is 5 times. That would be 105 in case you can't do math.
5 times what? 5 times 21?
21. Yeah, 105. That's my goal.
I know myself. I know that I'm not going to get even close to it, so I made peace with that fact.
Okay, let's get into the news. The fun part of news. Cloud Run, now supporting WebSockets, HTTP2, and gRPC. Most of us as infrastructure people probably could care less. If you're an application developer, this is where you're thinking, there is a blog post that goes along with it. Again, all the links for these will be down in the description or wherever these are at. But it gets into lots of details. Mainly, this is a classic picture here, right? You've got 2 whiteboards up and you're drawing on one and it's reflecting on the other in real time. Classic. But now you can do this in Cloud Run natively. All via WebSockets. No ugly Kubernetes stuff required.
Yeah.
So for application developers, holy cow. If you're not looking at this right now and you're still running on VMs, you need to find a new job. I'm sorry.
I'm kind of, and this is really now going outside of my area, I'm surprised that we are still not in a phase where we assume HTTP2 kind of, that comes later. I mean, I remember, what was it, like 5 years ago when I had that silly Dockerflow proxy project and the overwhelming number of requests were HTTP2 kind of, hey man, this is a standard, this is what everybody's using, how come that you're not supporting it, right?
Yep.
And today I'm really surprised. I'm not following those, so maybe it's not only Google, or probably not only Google Cloud Run problem.
Probably not. But now it's end-to-end, so it's not downgrading to 1. So that's pretty cool. So if you haven't looked into Google Cloud Run, or if this is the first time you've been by to see us, somebody told you to drop by and listen to a couple of old crazy people on Fridays. If you've never heard of Google Cloud Run and you're an application developer, now's the time to go look at it. Especially, well, I mean, you could have been using it before now, but if you're doing this type of work to where you needed sockets, HTTP2, whatever, it's there. Marco, good evening to you. Okay, next up. Oh, I'm down here at the bottom earlier. Last week, we talked about Elasticsearch changing their licensing to SSPL and Elasticsearch going a dual license model, much like Mongo. And of course, this was the hand slap to AWS because, oh no, we're creating this so you can't make money off of it. And AWS this week says, oh, okay, we'll go ahead and just work with the latest version and we'll go from there. Have a nice day.
It's almost like watching kids, very young kids fighting or arguing in a park or something like that. They're both wrong. I mean, both are doing something very silly, if you ask me. Elastic needs to get over the fact that they were behind an open source project, and the fact that somebody else wants to benefit from open source project is part of the game. That's how it works. On the other hand, the AWS is really reacting silly here as well. I mean, AWS is anything but big supporter of open source. So now, hey, we are going to fork an open source Elasticsearch. Come on. AWS is the least open source oriented of the big cloud vendors. So that move was a horrible move. And Elasticsearch also shouldn't have changed the license, but live with the fact that they have an open source project and somebody decided unjustly, completely I disagree with the moves that AWS made with Elastic. I disagree with them. But those are the rules of the game. It's open source. Anybody can come and benefit more than you from that project. That's how it works.
Well, open source under ASL, right? That's the key part of how it was licensed under open source.
Yeah.
Because there are some more restrictive...
When I say open source, I usually mean open source as if Apache or some similar permissive license.
Yeah. So, I have a feeling this isn't the end of it. This just feels like the beginning. The beginning of what? I don't know. It is 2021, right? Anything can happen.
Yeah, I have a feeling that while they're fighting around Elastic this and that, alternatives to Elastic are the only beneficiaries of all this, probably.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a market that became big and almost getting saturated for log analytics and for metrics. We have services, I don't know, Datadog, first one that comes to my mind. And we have on-prem, I run it myself, like Prometheus is ruling the area, and then Loki came along, right? It's a market that is evolving, and it's evolving faster than Elastic, if I might say so. I'm afraid that the only result of this is both Elastic and AWS losing the market share.
Yep. And to stick with AWS for just a moment, there was an ECS service quota announcement. Now, if you're not using ECS, you don't care. But I see this as them moving to the next level to get ready for the next big jump. And it wasn't huge. It went from 2,000 to 5,000 per cluster. So you can have 5,000 services and then 5,000 tasks within a service. Which if you have a service that's large, that is that large, holy cow. But evidently they do have some people. And you could have always asked for more limit, but now it's just included. So that tells me a couple of things. Number one, they're preparing for larger traffic from an ECS perspective, meaning, which we'll get to in just a minute, but also that they've got it baked to a point to where, okay, we can give people out of the box a higher limit. Seems reasonable. As much as you were just bashing AWS of not being happy with open source, the one thing that they do good is prices typically go down on things and service limits tend to go up.
Yeah.
They're really good at those two things. Once something is what I would say stable or very,
mature.
Mature, thank you. I was going to say old, but old wasn't right, but mature is correct.
You know, you and me are mature. We're not old.
We had this conversation before. You're mature. I'm ancient. I'm sticking with ancient, man. I like ancient. And the reason why I was pointing to one of the things is the new Copilot came out this past week. And the only thing here that jumped out at me that I loved was this one. Enable a deployment circuit breaker for all services by default. ECS will now automatically roll back your deployment on an unhealthy deployment without any manual intervention.
Finally. Great. I mean, not finally. Finally was the wrong word. That's not what I wanted to say. Great. I mean, we need those things. Things need to be simpler. Hey, roll back.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the point of having health checks in the first place if you cannot choose to roll back automatically?
Right. Yeah, that's great. I like this one too. Support for code commit for pipeline triggers. Now it's all wired in. If you're using both code commit and code pipeline. Now I know most people don't use code commit. I have a friend that uses it. He's basically fully in the AWS ecosystem because he wasn't using GitHub before. He was coming from, what was he using? I think it was Assembla or some other third-party something. And he went this direction. He's been pretty happy.
This is embarrassing now, but what is code commit? I'm supposed to know it, but like, is it their version control, something like that?
Code commit is their Git repo.
Git-based.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. It's all normal stuff. They still, so in code build, they have, so code build is their CI-ish tool, Travis-like, right? Give it a YAML and off it goes. Code pipeline is the thing that can help orchestrate. I wish there was a better word than orchestrate. I really don't like that word because it's become overloaded, right? We have container orchestration. So when you hear orchestration, what do you think? Well, it depends on what you're working on. But
yeah, but if you let's say that orchestration today is synonym with containers, you mean Kubernetes. You mean containers, you mean Kubernetes. So you need to be more specific if you mean orchestration something else.
Yes.
To avoid confusing other people, not because it's correct. It's not correct. Orchestration can be many things.
All right, I've got another wish list item for Dave. Dave is one of the Copilot developers. I think Dave is still one of the Copilot developers. Do we dare say this? We haven't talked about this. Can we disassociate Docker from Copilot? All I need to do is potentially build an image. Do I really need Docker?
Yeah, I would
actually, I guess it's right here. Skip prompting for a Docker file if Docker engine's not running. So there's a variation of that, I guess.
Yeah. And I think that now you can build. So, I think that Docker is a perfectly fine and preferable tool to build your images locally. Yeah. It's more a question of, hey, can we, when the time comes to build the image, why don't you just do it somewhere in AWS? Why do you need Docker on my laptop? When I execute Copilot, this and that. If it needs to build the image, just build the image.
Yeah, or if I'm using Copilot in my CI process, let's say I've got Jenkins running inside of Kubernetes. If I've got Jenkins running on bare metal, then I'm going to use Docker. There's no reason to not use Docker. I don't have to get fancy.
Oh, yeah.
But if I'm inside of Kubernetes, then I want to be able to use Canico, build pick one to begin with, make it Canico to begin with, and then make it pluggable later on. Something like that. I don't know. I'm just thinking a little bit beyond that.
It's just about making it pluggable, right? Hey, I don't even mind. I suspect that most Copilot users are not really doing anything with Copilot inside of Kubernetes.
No.
I'm guessing because, hey, you chose ECS, which is basically a competitor of Kubernetes. Right. So you're probably not using it, but still, making it pluggable is a good idea always. Yeah. And default, that's fine.
Yeah, that's completely okay. All right, so that was Copilot. Next up is a thing called Sidero. I saw this, I think I saw it on Twitter. Somebody was talking about it. It's bare metal lifecycle management. Going from completely cloud-based to why are you doing this still in real life? It is open source. It just gives you the ability. It feels like kubeadm on steroids. When I went through the documentation, which I'm not finding it. There we go. It's still alpha, but actually it was just beta that hit this week. So I haven't tried it yet, but I saw a lot of chatter about it, so I figured I'd put it on the list in case you're still one of the ones having to deal with bare metal VMs, whatever. Let's see, let's go there. I still say, yeah, so this is like,
Not very descriptive, huh?
No. Unless it's I mean, this middle one seems interesting to me. Register the servers, classify them, provision them.
So here's the thing that confuses me. Is I understand second one, I understand the third one, I don't understand the first one. Build on Kubernetes, making deployments fast and easy. I mean,
yeah.
How is that any different bare metal from not bare metal?
Yeah.
You know, the only difference I can imagine is of managing your cluster, managing your Kubernetes, managing infrastructure, and all that stuff. That I understand fully how bare metal could be and is different from service-based VMs, what's or not. Deployment? Why are they talking about deployment?
Yeah, I don't know. Running Talos. So I guess Talos is their, I don't know. Talos must be their distro, for lack of a better term. Anyway.
Those things should become, if you ask me, those things should also become transparent. I shouldn't need to worry whether it's bare metal or it's VMs. Yeah. I should worry about speed. I should be able to go to AWS and say, hey, I need this latency. Right?
Yep.
And I'm willing to pay for this latency extra money, right? And now, whether you give me that latency through VMs or through bare metal, or you have goblins there doing some random stuff with random things, I do not care. So to me, whether it's bare metal or VMs is irrelevant. What you have certain requirements, you have those, you ask your provider to provide you to fulfill those requirements, and it's up to them to figure out whether it's bare metal or not. Now, of course, if you're talking about on-prem, then the situation is different. But then,
it's what it is. No cluster auto-scaling for you if you're on-prem. If you're bare metal, let's put it that way. Now, if a company can solve that problem, cluster auto-scaling for bare metal, Amazon would have to, not AWS, but Amazon would have to be part of that solution, right?
I mean,
shipping things in.
I mean, but still, it's, if you have physical servers that you own or it's in your domain somehow, then why would you utilize 80% and have 20% dormant so that you can auto-scale? I would immediately go to 100%, right? Kind of like,
right.
Why wouldn't I?
Right.
That thing changes when we're talking about cloud vendors because they say, hey, actually, this is a shared capacity for everybody. So maybe Darin right now needs a bit less, and that will allow Victor to have a bit more, right? So we have infinity because the resources are shared across many. So it feels like infinity, right? Well, and you can scale up and down.
It sort of goes back to the old VMware days to where I might be, during the week, my capacity might be 50%, but on weekends, my part of it goes to 10 or 15. But then the batch guys need all the extra memory and CPU that they can get. So then VMware's, just moving the capacity around as needed.
Yeah, which is what Kubernetes is doing now for us on application rather than VM level, right? So realistically, now you can say, let's say that you're 100% on Kubernetes, which I know it's a stretch, nobody is. But if you're completely on Kubernetes, you can just say, hey, all the nodes become a cluster or clusters. And then it's Kubernetes to figure out how to scale one application and descale another.
Yeah. Thomas brings up a good point. Sweden and parts of Europe are slow to move to cloud. And this is a way to get to cloud before they're ready to trust cloud. So if we can get them using Kubernetes before they go cloud, well, that's a scary thing too, right? Because can they actually get Kubernetes operating inside four walls?
I mean, you can, but it's complicated. It's time demanding and requires a lot of knowledge that you normally do not need at that level. Yeah. And this is, can I get political right now?
Yes, please, go ahead.
So this is, I think yesterday or something like that, I read that your current, that time current, now ex-president, signed that absolutely, and everybody, all the information needs to be gathered from all cloud providers on all different levels about all the users. And this is the biggest reason why Europe is behind cloud adoption compared to US, right? Kind of, it's very, basically it complicates the whole idea about sovereignty of data and staying in my region, you know, and all the stuff. That was very negative news when I read it.
I'm not going to get political.
It's not political. It's just I'm complaining that it doesn't matter really politics, but it's very concerning that basically that no matter where the data is, it is officially falls under U.S. laws.
U.S. jurisdiction.
If you have a data center in Germany, it's still under U.S. jurisdiction. So some companies, I mean, if it would be the other way around, I'm pretty sure the same thing would be happening in the U.S. You would be reluctant to say, hey, everything I have is governed by German law, right?
Yeah. That's out of our pay scale, I think.
Not in mine.
I'm not even going to try that one. Let's see here. The next one. This is part of one of our friends, Adam. His company. Let me put this back up here. Most people, when they're writing in theory, most people, when they're writing stuff for Kubernetes, they think they have to write in Go. Victor, you have professed your love for Go.
Yes.
I'm not anti-Go, but I don't know it as well. I still dream in Java, which is sad. But this was, they had a new release earlier this week that makes it better. This comes from Container Solutions, which is where Adam Sandor is. Is he still there? He is still there.
Yeah, he's still there, yeah.
So if you've ever thought about writing a Kubernetes operator, but you didn't want to learn Go, but you know Java, and you weren't aware of this framework, go check it out. Java-operator-sdk.
Pretty cool, actually.
Yep. And it's based on Fabricate, which is what most all Java interactions with Kubernetes uses under the hood. Okay. I won't spend any more time on that because I know how much you dislike Java. Next, kubectl skew. I don't know if you're going to laugh at me for putting this on here or not. You probably will.
Lucky for you, I don't know what it is yet, so I'm going to delay laughter.
So it tells you if it's a plugin. So number one, plugin, thumbs up.
Yeah.
And it tells you if your version is skewed. So if we take a look at this, the cluster is 16, kubectl is 19, and the latest shipping is 20.2. So the server version is whatever NG means. The client version is OK. And it says your Kubernetes cluster version is unsupported. There are 4 minor versions skew with the latest, which must be within 2.
Yeah. And why not? This is, but realistically, this is the job of whichever tool or service you're using to really lint your cluster and to validate it. And this should be part of really security scanning, most likely, if you ask me.
Yeah.
But hey, small little tool, why not?
Yeah.
See, I didn't laugh. You warned me, so I prepared myself mentally.
Okay. And you know I wouldn't care if you laughed at me. Okay. So you may or may not like this. It's up to you. It's a fairly new project. It's only 20 days is the oldest, I think. Yeah. So, and open source. All right. That was kubectl skew. Finally, Regclient. I watched the replay of Brett Fisher's live stream yesterday. So today is Friday, January 22nd. So it was the Thursday, the 21st. And he had on, oh, help me, what was his name? Brandon Mitchell, to talk about Regclient. And Regclient is just a client to where you can do things with registries without having to have Docker installed. So it's just making registry calls. And the demo was pretty interesting. And Victor and I were talking about this before. It's like, well, most of the registry tools already have this. And my response back to that was, well, these are written to the spec, or to the registry v2 spec, I believe is how Brandon put it. This feature, there's actually, so right now this is a mono repo that's eventually, he said, is going to get broken out, but there's a regctl, there's a reg sync. So if I wanted to mirror repositories or images between repositories, I could do that. Regbot, I'm guessing. So what's interesting though is anything where you needed to do scripting, it's all in Lua. Golly, I haven't written Lua in years. I was looking at the script, it's like, okay, I can read that, but I don't know that I can write it anymore.
How many people really write Lua?
A lot of gaming people do. Gaming people do. But
okay.
Lua is still a very popular language.
Gonna open a beer to that.
Another one. How many are you in
Lua.
now? That's the second, right?
Second,
Okay.
And those are the quarter liter small. So.
Okay.
And it's Friday.
So anyway, it's Friday. So this looked pretty interesting anyway. If you've been trying to figure out, well, man, I don't want to put Docker on somewhere to where I just have to do, because I believe Brandon's talk around some of this, and if anybody watched it, I'll have the link over to that episode of Brett's show down in the notes as well, so you can go back and watch it. This basically replaces a lot of because if I needed to move an image from my registry to a different registry, I would have to do a Docker pull and then do a Docker push. Whereas I could run the sync command or the Regclient, whichever the command was, and basically say, hey, go pull it from over here. Just be a registry to registry call. Effectively. That's not correct, but whatever. And it's still pretty new. But it's what it is. Okay. Since I can't talk any better than that, let's move on to your 2 videos for the week. I cannot believe... Well, I can believe that you did actually review eksctl. We've talked about it.
Yeah.
And I know the people at Weaveworks, and so it's, it's what's really telling about eksctl is that AWS has taken this as their default and recommended way of doing things.
Yes. And I was a heavy eksctl user back in the day. And at that time, and the reason why I fell off eksctl at that time was that it was only CLI, no configuration of any sorts of kind.
Right.
And then they started having some configuration which was silly limiting and it was not, right? So I kind of fell back to Terraform and defining, and I think we disagree on that one, but defining EKS in Terraform is far from trivial because it's not really EKS. It's a bunch of other resources that need to be defined and what's not.
Yeah.
And What I like about eksctl is that first, it is a configuration as code now, so it's not only CLI. That's a big thumbs up. Puts it on the same level conceptually as Terraform. But what matters more is that eksctl treats EKS as a single service.
Right.
While Terraform is a reflection of how AWS organized EKS, which is not a single service, right? From AWS perspective, you cannot just say, give me an EKS cluster. No. It's going to ask you 57 different questions to answer because you need a bunch of other stuff set up in advance. And Terraform takes the same approach as AWS takes, while eksctl says, hey, you want EKS cluster? Yes. Do you want to worry about networking and this and that? Yes or no? No. Okay, excellent. Here's your cluster. And it ends up being the same. Like the experience is for creating a cluster, not for upgrading. I have very negative opinion about that. But for creating cluster, the experience is on the same level as using Terraform for Google Cloud, GKE or AKS. Experience from the perspective of the person who defines it. Hey, give me answer 7 questions and off you go.
How many pages? So if you were to create an EKS cluster with Terraform that is equivalent of an eksctl created cluster, how many times do you have to scroll on the page for that Terraform definition?
I think I had it in that video. I don't remember exact numbers, but maybe that I had like 15 to 20 lines of eksctl configuration, and the same thing is Terraform was a couple of 100 lines.
Yeah.
And that's as simple as possible, so kind of no fuss, just absolute bare minimum.
Right. Okay. So eksctl, if you haven't watched that, link will be there. And then Kustomize. I will admit, I sort of listened to this one, and my eyes glazed over. Because Kustomize Helm, who cares? Doesn't matter.
It's a templating versus patching question. That's the real question somebody should ask. Do you want to write YAML that contains templating? You know, curly braces with if-else statements and stuff like that? Or do you want to write pure YAML and then you have to patch it with the differences depending on the environment? That's what it boils down to. Now, I have personally very strong incentive for Kustomize at this very moment because it is a better fit for something that I do outside of this forum. Mm-hmm. But if somebody wants a summary, I'm not going to say it, actually. No, because I got a bunch of comments, some private, some public in Reddit, some public in YouTube, a lot of emails. I mean, basically, I was saturated with comments, and they're all saying the same thing. Do a comparison between Helm and Kustomize. And that's coming probably next week or week after next.
And no teasers, so that's fine. I was going to try to get something out of you, but I'm not going to.
Most likely it will start the video with, I'm going to say something that I hate when other people say, but I'm going to have to say it. And that something is that TLDR is, it depends.
It depends.
I hate when it depends. That's the worst sentence anybody can say about anything. It depends. It means nothing. It means that you're a spineless person who cannot make a decision, or at least tell that decision to others. But in case of Helm and Kustomize, it really depends. And it really mostly depends on, okay, so here's the thing. If I would, without any further information, without knowing what you're doing, how you're doing and stuff like that, because those things would change my answer drastically. But if all I know is whether you're a developer or sysadmin or operator, I would say developers, users, Helm, better option. Operators, Kustomize, better option.
What if you're a DevOps person?
Then you're an operator who knows how to write code. Kustomize still.
Still Kustomize. Okay.
or a developer who learned something about. No, but anyways, let's say that. So a great thing about Helm is that you can know nothing about Kubernetes or Istio or networking or any of those things. You can go to a Helm chart values and say, hey, it says here host. I should probably change the host to be something else, whatever or kind of ingress enabled, true, false, right? You can basically tweak how the application behaves without really knowing anything about how that application is defined. And that is absolutely awesome. The problem with Helm is that from the perspective of a person defining, your chart needs to have all the permutations anybody would ever need. Right? Because it needs to fulfill everybody's needs to just change variables. What I can do with customers is say, hey, you haven't thought about adding ingress to your definitions. I can just patch it with by adding ingress controller. Or you already have ingress, but you didn't think about TLS, for example, because that was not your use case. I'm going to patch your definition of ingress for this application by adding only this section into the manifest. It's literally patching, right? Yeah. And that's very powerful, but it's not really user-friendly because a person who doesn't understand really how that specific resource works will have a hard time patching.
The level of detail, it makes total sense. The level of detail you have to understand is infinitely more than just making the initial definition.
Exactly.
The way that I'm going to say it is most people will create a Helm chart for the happy path. Kustomize brings reality to the situation. Because let's say I've got my application and let's say I'm a software vendor, I've got my application and I've tested in the big three. But I didn't test in OpenShift. I didn't test in a kubeadm provisioned cluster. I didn't test in all these other things. Without Kustomize, that's impossible to even attempt to try to fix on OpenShift or the kubeadm created cluster. It's not impossible, but it's a real pain to do because at the end of the day, Kustomize, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's effectively doing what kubectl patch does, or kubectl apply patch. That's the nuts and bolts of it.
Exactly. You define the manifests like the same as you would execute with kubectl apply, and then you define patches for this environment, for that environment. And I cannot express how often I get, really very often I get frustrated with third-party Helm charts. That most of the time they do exactly what they need except.
Yep.
And then that except, kind of that tiny detail is that, yes, I want Linkerd instead of Istio, or I want service mesh, and it's sufficient to have that. And then what am I going to do? I'm not going to fork their chart because I want to benefit from future upgrades.
Yep.
I need to create my own chart that has your chart as required, and then do some fun. It just goes insane if you. So let's put it this way: if the chart you're using is doing what you need it to do, then using a chart is easier and more user friendly than Kustomize. If you need to go modify it, no.
Yeah, let's get into a couple of comments here. Kustomize has disadvantage to templates. I can modify a Helm value file, but not with Kustomize. So I need to deploy the same Helm chart in different environments without duplication. Kustomize knows Kubernetes, but not standard YAML.
I wouldn't agree with that.
Okay.
So for different environment or whatever was the previous comments, that's the purpose of overlays in Kustomize. That's actually what the whole point of patching is, really.
Right.
And not understanding YAML. Now we can say that how Kustomize does things is great or not great, but it is YAML. Helm is definitely not YAML because Open Helm template in any YAML editor and you will see a bunch of red stuff. Simply, curly braces templating is not part of YAML. Helm produces YAML, yes. But Helm definitions are definitely not YAML.
But I think you can agree with this one, and I do.
Yes.
After Helm. So if you try to go straight to Kustomize instead of using Helm to begin with, you could.
I'm not sure. I would say that if you go to Kustomize, you need to understand Kubernetes YAML before going to Kustomize. Whether you understood it by modifying Helm chart templates or directly Kubernetes YAML files, I don't think that there is such a difference. If anything, with Helm, you might need to unlearn some things, which is sometimes problematic, difficult, right? Yeah. At least for me. At least I had my main problem with Kustomize was I was trying to apply in the past, to apply my knowledge and understanding of Helm to Kustomize, and then I got frustrated, kind of, how cannot do that? I have no values, kind of like, or equivalent of values. Huh? Then I get mad and frustrated and all this stuff. But it's it's equivalent to kubectl patch.
Right. And just to follow up with Thomas here, it's not templates, but the values. So.
Yeah. There is no equivalent to values.
Yeah.
Or any, and that's a bugger, but it's very different.
Yeah. Can you do easy rollbacks with Kustomize like you can with Helm?
No. Kustomize is only about producing manifests that you send to Kubernetes API. Let's say that Kustomize is not even equivalent to Helm. Kustomize is equivalent to Helm template command. That's what it does, right? You combine templates in Helm with values. You execute Helm template. You get Kubernetes manifests, pure manifests as output, and then you send it to Kubernetes. Now, all the rest of the stuff like Helm rollback, that doesn't exist, nor it will ever exist in Kustomize. Kustomize is only about producing the manifest that you can send to Kubernetes API. Only that, nothing else. Now, what we can argue is, I think that Helm rollbacks are very useful, but also it really depends whether you're using Helm rollbacks to do rollbacks or no. I would argue that we should be moving towards GitOps, and then you should have a process that applies your Helm charts as they change in some Git repository, and then when you roll back, you revert the commit, right? That would be a GitOps way. Or you have a process inside of your cluster that rolls back based on some metrics. Like now we would be talking about Argo rollouts or Flagger. So either roll back a Git commit or let the system roll back automatically. And Helm is neither of the two, right? It's not rolling back automatically, and is also not leaving trace of what you rolled back to in Git. So it's a bit problematic. I think it's very useful when you find it out the first time, but I think that we are moving away from it. Automated rollbacks are a better idea, or GitOps based.
Yeah, it's the Helm update or Helm rollback is good for when you're figuring things out, but it's not good operationally.
No. Ultimately, one way or another, you want to end up with rolling back that definition, that change to the tag, let's say in Git. Yeah. One way or another. Now, if you want to roll back in Helm and then push that same change commit to Git, then I might half agree.
You caught me drinking. Sorry.
Okay. I'm drinking as well.
I figured you were going to go a little bit longer on that, but that's okay. What else? Long weekend, right? No, that was this
weekend.
No, it's going to be a short weekend, I think.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Is it even? I mean, it's just we're still rolling day. It's like, okay, The day ends in day. So what are we doing today?
To be honest, I'm having difficulty to distinguish. Actually, let's put it this way. The only reason why I really truly know that it's weekend is because I associated this with the end of the weekdays, this session.
Yep.
Otherwise, my weekends are not really any different from weekdays. That's remote working at its best.
Remote working in a pandemic, it's even worse.
Yeah.
Because even when we were remote, pre-pandemic, we were traveling. So at least you had a rhythm of travel, whatever that might be.
Or you would go to cine. I don't know. Maybe you're playing soccer with your friends.
Yeah.
You're doing something. When I'm at home, there is a limit to how many movies I can see on Netflix until I get bored and stand up and go to my office, and then the world ends.
Translated, you sit down to record something else or write something else.
Yeah.
Hey, I saw you cut a new release of the catalog today, or at least the hard copy, or the book.
Okay, no, that's I'm at the end of chapters now. If I publish a video that is somehow related with something from the book, I would put the reference there. It's just a link.
Oh, okay. I didn't look at the I didn't look at the git commit, so I didn't remember. I probably should have asked you not on camera, but that's what we do here. We're family, right? We just sit here and talk.
Exactly.
Okay. If you have any questions, go ahead and get them in before this is sort of last call, if you will. And since I know that we're on normal latency, it'll take a little bit longer. So I'll keep talking for another minute. We do have, what do we have coming up? So we should be here next week. I think the week after that we'll be here, but it may be like super early in the morning my time. So it might be like, well, it'll still be super early for you, meaning noon, your time. I'm not sure yet. There's something going on that I think the second weekend in February for me, or that second Friday in February. So I just have to check it out. Oh, this is a great question, Christian. What's your take on golden images?
Is it good?
So let me ask the question. So Christian, and I know this is going to take a second, by golden image, do you mean a golden container image or a golden VM image? The answer is probably similar, but
I mean, since Packer is mentioned, I would assume that it's about VM images.
A VM, that's what I would feel.
I would be guessing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what in-place server updates easier means in the context of Packer, because Packer is mostly about. So I think I'm getting, and I'm probably going off completely and misunderstanding the question. But if golden image is an image that you use to build all other VMs,
yeah, it's the VM.
Then I don't like it. I think that it's okay to have golden image, but then go a step further and say that everything is an image, not only that there is a baseline image. And then we do at runtime changes to our cluster that is changes to our VMs based on that base image, right? No, use the base image, golden image, but only to build other images.
Right. You would never deploy that golden image to run anything. It's an abstract, if you want to consider it that way.
Yeah. And abstract not to build something on runtime, but abstract to build the final image.
To build the final image. Yeah. I think because usually that means you've gone in and hardened whatever your base OS is. And you've put in whatever the other things are.
Yeah.
So building the real VM golden images, I actually like them for that purpose, but that purpose only. And then what's produced off of them, so the final like deployable image, that's good. But
and it also depends also how much you have variety. If it's mostly Kubernetes, then golden image or not golden image, there is one image for all the nodes. That's one of the, I think, big advantages of Kubernetes is that allows us to unify infrastructure. We change servers only when we want to upgrade. But there is one server all the servers are exactly the same, based on exactly the same image. Maybe the difference is between control plane and worker nodes, but that's how far it goes.
Yeah.
Now, if you're talking about outside Kubernetes, then that can go crazy.
Yeah. Don't let it go crazy, though. I've seen people go like 4 levels deep of Goldens. Like there's the top of the pyramid, and then there's 2 here, and then another 4 underneath that, and it's like bad multi-level marketing. And you're not making any money on it. You're causing more hassles. The dependency gets bad.
I really believe in do not repeat yourself, don't copy and paste stuff, but there is a limit to that. And comes the moment, like the team I'm working with right now, at the end I told them, hey, just copy that, whatever that something is, kind of just copy it. Let's stop this madness. Just make a copy and change whatever you need. Kind of, I cannot take it anymore.
Yep. Sometimes you just have to say that.
Yeah, there is nothing wrong in copy when there is a reason for that, or to put it the other way around. We shouldn't try to not repeat ourselves for
just because
at any cost. Just because.
Yeah.
I see the same thing with Helm charts, and I'm mentioning it only because we were talking about it. The Helm chart that extends the Helm chart. I mean, it's not extended; it's really dependent on another Helm chart, which is dependent on another Helm chart, because you try to make, something that suits absolutely everybody, and then variations and stuff like that goes crazy.
Yeah.
If every application is a separate repo, I have no problem that there are things copied across repos. I have no problem with that.
Yeah. It's not preferred, but sometimes you just have to deal with it.
I mean, depends. Sometimes it is even preferred.
Well, that's true.
It all depends on how much I have access to the common goods, let's say, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's easiest for me just to change something related to my application, not go into some central repository of something, chart, image, whatever, and start making an infinite number of if-else statements so that the change that I need is not reflected on changes on what everybody else needs. And that's one of the things that potentially I like about Kustomize is that, hey, if I have this environment, I can patch that environment to do what I need. If I go to the Helm chart, I would need to start with if. If this new variable that I'm creating does not exist, do nothing. If it does, then apply this.
Yep. My head's spinning, and I still have a couple hours to record today. So
let's
I
close
think,
it.
Thomas, thanks for hanging out. We'll let it end with Vladislav today. Have a great weekend, people. That's the great way to think about it. If you can get out, get out. If you're in Siberia, okay, maybe don't get out. Do we have anybody from Siberia? I don't remember. But anyway. Oh, I never even put the scroll up. If you haven't subscribed yet, if you like today's video, go ahead and give us a thumbs up if you don't mind. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe, ring the bell, do the things, all the YouTube things. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. If you haven't bought the books, go buy the books. That's it. I hate marketing.
All the jazz.
All the things. All the scribes do that. Okay. And Marco, we'll let Marcos be the last one. Have a nice weekend, people. Yes, everybody have a great weekend. We will see you next week, probably at the same time. I think it's going to work out. Okay. See you. Bye.
Cheers, everyone.